We'll go ahead and get started. We do have a lot to cover. So I just want to say hello and welcome. And we are excited to have you here with us today. So just to get started, as you know, Eureka Mathematics Edition is a free resource for all schools in Texas, in partnership with Texas Home Learning, which is a TEA initiative to ensure that districts have access to high quality curriculums, both in person and virtually. So today we're going to discuss what Eureka Math has to offer and how we can help your schools have a successful school year. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Jada Singleton, and I am the implementation leader for Texas. I have currently been with Great Minds full-time for about 2 years now. And prior to that, I did facilitate professional development part-time. At the same time, I was also an assistant principal here in Lafayette, Louisiana, where I am still currently. Before I came to be an assistant principal, I was an instructional math coach where I assisted our district in implementing Eureka Math. So I really had an opportunity to observe multiple teachers, provide feedback, analyze data, create anything they needed, help support just in any way needed. And before that, I was a second grade teacher and a fifth grade math teacher. So I'm excited to be here and to help you all with your implementation process. So with that being said, I'll let the rest of the Texas team introduce themselves.
Hey, you on mute?
Michael, you didn't forget I introduced myself last time.
All right, sorry.
That's so funny. He thought he forgot me last time, but I'll skip ahead and then you can go. I'm going to do a introduction. Dr. Josh Galindo is our regional sales strategist, and we partner for the state to help with all things implementation, cost proposals, planning. So reach out to us anytime. At the end, we're going to give you our contact information. Josh is in the most southern tip of Texas. That's his home, but of course we go everywhere. And I am southwest of the Houston area. But I have ventured all over the state, grew up in West Texas, some schooling in North Texas, and I have 15 years of classroom experience teaching math and science, most of those years, and 12 to 13 years in intense intervention. And I went from intervention to prevention. When I found Great Minds, I realized this was something that could really make a difference. And not just my adult life and career, but even my childhood was always mission driven. So I'm still on a mission, spread the good news. I've been called the mouth of the South before. So we are happy to help you. That is our goal here, is to help more students, more teachers, to have a better experience with math, which of course will be a gateway to all sorts of opportunities. So thank you for joining us. Michael.
Thanks, Paige. Thanks for not forgetting me, like I may have done you. Well, thank you everyone for being here. My name is Michael Norton. I am a manager on the Eureka Math Texas team. I joined Great Minds a little over a year ago for that purpose, to be part of supporting schools, supporting you all with your Eureka Math adoption and implementation. So I live in Houston, not too far from Paige. And before I joined Eureka Math last year, I was working for a district at the district level here in Houston, supporting implementation, Eureka Math implementation. Prior to that, school-based administrator and coach. And then I started 15 years ago as a 5th and 6th grade math teacher. So still very much a 5th, 6th grade math teacher at heart, but absolutely love the opportunity to get to work with you all. So we're going to talk about our professional learning and other ways that we can support your implementation and be part of the state approved vendor list. But before we get into all that, we're going to do an activity. And so on the screen, you see a sequence of number bonds. And number bonds are a way to represent part-whole relationships. So the whole is that the top one in the middle, and then the parts are surrounding the whole. And so I want you to look at this sequence of number bonds. It starts in kindergarten. It goes all the way up to with cars, and then goes all the way up to algebra concepts, 8x decomposed into 5x and 3x. And I just want you to look at this and just observe, what is the same and what's different about this progression of number bonds? And when you have a thought, you can drop it in the chat. What's the same and what's different? Excellent, Heather. Yeah, so Heather is pointing out that in this, Heather and Katie both, right? We have 8 as our whole, and 5 and 3 are the 2 parts, and that's consistent throughout all of them. So if you combine the 5 and the 3, you get 8. So in all of these, the 2 parts sum up to the whole. We can also think about it in terms of decomposition, that the whole can be decomposed into these 2 parts. Excellent. So what's different? The parts of the wholes are the same. What's different? Well, maybe you noticed that in the first one, we are excellent. So the part whole shown in a variety of ways. So the progression, okay, excellent. Thanks, Lori. So you'll notice that there's a progression, right? Like there's a sequence here. It starts with cars, and then it goes all the way to X's. And in between, we use tens, which is a place value unit, eighths, which is a fractional unit. And then eventually fractions are written in fraction form. And so what's different is the unit. The unit changes. And you probably notice that the unit becomes increasingly more complex, right? Starts with something concrete like cars, then tens, then we get into units of meters and fours and fractional units, and then we get to the units of x's. So here's my next question. Why do you think we represent this, all of these number bonds, in unit form? Like, why didn't we just say that 8 tens and 8 tens is 5 and 3 tens? Why didn't we just say 80 is 50 and 30? Why did we write 8 tens can be decomposed into 5 tens and 3 tens? And why did we write 8 eighths as opposed to 8 over 8 and 3 eighths as opposed to 3 over 8? Excellent, Katie. Yeah, you might have actually dropped that in before I asked that question, but you anticipated my question. It shows you that the math is connected. That's exactly right. So regardless of the unit, whether it's cars or tens or eighths or x's, it's still the math is connected. In other words, the concept of composition and decomposition, of part and whole, of addition and subtraction, it's the same concept from cars to x's. The only thing that's changing is the unit. Specifically, the units are becoming more abstract and more complex over the course of this progression. And so, the question that we have to ask then, well, what impact does that have on our instruction? In other words, how can we teach students, how can we prepare students starting in kindergarten for adding 5x and 3x, for adding x's? And one of the ways we can do that is by reiterating over the course of the student's experience with math is that we're teaching them the same concepts of addition and subtraction, composition and decomposition. We're just changing the unit. That's the only thing that's changing. And so I have a story here. This is an absolutely true story. I remember this vividly. I was in spring of my 7th grade year, and we were starting to do some algebra concepts to prepare for 8th grade. And there was a substitute teacher in the class. And that day, the lesson was teaching us that x plus x equals 2x. And I had a breakdown. It made absolutely no sense to me. And I remember getting home and arguing with my parents about how it's not possible that x plus x could equal 2x. I was arguing with my friends. I didn't argue with the substitute teacher, but I did ask a lot of questions about why. It made absolutely no sense. And then when the regular teacher came back and was able to explain it to me, I got it. But it was like 2 days of enormous frustration. And the point is that it was because I was learning that x plus x equals 2x as if it were a completely new concept. And it's not. And if the teacher had said, hey, Michael, adding x plus x is just like adding 1 car plus 1 car. It's just that now we're talking about x's instead of cars. And in that way, that makes algebra, which can be a challenging concept, it makes it accessible for all students. And that's one of the big ideas of our curriculum, which is that if you teach math coherently and as a story, and you introduce complex units onto an existing understanding of concepts, then all students can have access to our curriculum. Okay, Jada, you can go to the next slide. So, we're going to talk about professional learning, but we wanted to open with an activity that gets at the why of our professional learning. And the whole purpose of our professional learning is to evolve our mindsets about math and about children and about academic equity, as well as build our practice, build our knowledge and skills to actually facilitate and coach Eureka Math. And so that activity we did is actually it is the opening activity for any teacher who is using Eureka Math. It is part of our launch, which is a foundational session. It's the very first thing we start with. And we wanted to bring that into here to show you how we work with both evolving mindsets and building practice. And so hopefully, granted it was a 10-minute, it wasn't even, it was a 5-minute activity, but hopefully it helped you see just a little bit about how we can teach students, like what the value of coherence, right? And that all students can learn algebra if they're taught starting in kindergarten that adding x's is just like adding cars. And hopefully it gave you just an idea of what that looks like. And our goal here is that students of all ages, whether it's us or the students, is that or the children, is that we all become thinkers and doers of mathematics. And we, as the adults, need to first become thinkers and doers of mathematics so that we can then bring our students along in that journey. So we're going to go into our professional learning, but before we do that, my final piece, and I'll hand it off to Jada, is just to lay out for you the phases of implementation. Now, of course, like any chart, right? It looks clean on paper, but in reality, it's a process. But the couple key takeaways here. So, first, teachers start engaging with Eureka Math, and we begin our foundational PD before teachers start teaching Eureka Math. And there's 2 sessions that are part of that opening foundational PD. One is launch, and the other one is fluency. Once the year gets underway, so maybe 3 months or so into the school year, we move into our next session, which is the preparation and customization. And that constitutes our foundational PD. And the reason we wait for preparation and customization is because teachers need a little bit of experience with the curriculum before that session really clicks for them. From there, we move into continuing the phases of implementation where teachers are extending their knowledge of Eureka Math, and then finally they're skillfully implementing Eureka Math, and we support that with our sustaining and special focus professional development. In addition to the foundational and sustaining professional development, we have personalized coaching, and that can start as soon after the foundational PD, those 3 foundational PD sessions are done for teachers, and it can run alongside the foundational PD or alongside the sustaining and special focus PD. So this is just meant to give you an overview of the arc and the way that our professional learning supports that arc. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Jada.
Thank you, Michael. So as you just saw on the previous slide, we have 2 types of professional learning. We have professional development and personalized coaching. So the professional development consists of our foundational, sustaining, and special focus sessions. And it focuses on the big idea and the key components of Eureka Math. So these are all one-off sessions. Some are a full day, some are a half day, and some are 90 minutes, each with a specific focus. Now, our personalized coaching is for schools and districts to apply what they've learned in the professional development sessions that we just talked about, so they can apply that to their schools. Now, our coaches model lessons, they observe classrooms, and they observe classrooms alongside leaders, with the goal of helping teachers to improve implementation and to allow leaders to develop effective ways to support, understand, and evaluate classroom practices. Now, like PD, the flexibility, the structure is the same for coaching. Typically, we recommend a 6-package over the course of the year, a 6-package session. We open with strong start for leaders, no matter what, and then it's followed by a specific track based on your school's needs. Now, we're going to spend most of our time today talking about PD and coaching, and highlighting how our professional development, the learning, how it evolves and how it builds knowledge and skills. Now, at the end of the session, we're going to share a PDF of the course syllabus that describes in greater detail about our PD and coaching sessions. And we're going to give you an example of a 3-year sequence that incorporates both PD and coaching. Now, our foundational PD sessions for teachers follows a 3-part arc. As we experienced in our opening number bond activity, these sessions really focus on mindsets and practice. Now, in launch, teachers learn about the big idea of part-whole relationships and units, and how students can learn more complex concepts when they see the connection from prior learning to new learning. Teachers also learn about our 4 components of the lesson: fluency practice, application problem, concept development, and student debrief. They also get the opportunity to watch videos, to see how teachers model those activities, to see those components in action and how they look in a classroom. Then we have the fluency in action. Now, we reconstruct our understanding of fluency. So we want to get away from thinking that it's memorizing steps or doing math fast. Instead, fluency is based on conceptual understanding and explaining why strategies work, and applying those strategies to new problems. Now, teachers also learn how to plan for and facilitate fluency practice routines. They get to deliberately practice. For example, they learn about the intentional design behind sprints. They get to experience a sprint, and they learn how to use them in a classroom to build students' automaticity and conceptual understanding. Finally, we have our preparation and customization of a lesson. This is where teachers really learn that math is a story. And you know, Eureka Math is the story of units. They learn how math makes sense for all students when taught as a story. Then teachers put the lesson preparation process into practice so they can facilitate a full lesson that's aligned to the objective within their math block. Now, like Michael mentioned before, we do recommend launching fluency prior to starting with Eureka Math. Then we move on to preparation and customization once the year is underway. This is giving teachers an opportunity to have a few months to experience teaching the curriculum. Now, in addition to our 3 standard foundational sessions, for schools and districts that are using EQUIP, we have a recommended session called Addressing Unfinished Learning with Eureka Math EQUIP. Now, this is part of the yearly professional development learning. In this session, just like in our other sessions, we build the mindset that the best form of addressing gaps or unfinished learning is to provide it while they're learning grade level content. So students really get to engage in that grade level content, which is the most important thing. Teachers get to explore how to use the pre-module assessments and the data to drive remediation recommendations so that they can accelerate learning while keeping students on track, again, with that grade level content. So we are hosting a 3-part series this fall, really talking about learning acceleration and how Eureka Math is aligned to learning acceleration. So next Thursday at 4 p.m., we are actually covering how to use Eureka Math EQUIP for learning acceleration, specifically in the context of House Bill 4545. So if you are interested in attending, or if you even want the recording sent to you, you can register at the link that we'll send at the end of the session. Now, while teachers are actually completing their 3-part professional development series, administrators attend their own lead session. And this is a foundational session for the leaders. Now, since this is a foundational PD, we focus on 3 big ideas for administrators during the first and second phase of implementation. So the first part, we really focus on coherence in Eureka Math. Eureka Math is a story, but the whole story isn't always visible to teachers in the early phases of implementation because of course they're only seeing their grade level. Therefore, the administrators who are working with multiple grade levels are actually the guardians of the coherence. In other words, the administrators really need to ensure that each student in each grade level is learning about the part of the story that they should be learning, whether it's unit form in kindergarten and continue to use unit form at each grade level with a number like the number by an activity you just saw, or using the area model in grade 3 with 2-digit by 1-digit multiplication. And again, they saw this in grade 3, so students can even use it for more complex multiplication of decimals when they get to grade 5. So administrators really get to see the full story and therefore ensure each grade level sticks to the story. Otherwise, students will have to learn how to add 5x and 3x without knowing it's the same as adding 5 cars and 3 cars. Second, the most important must do for teachers in year 1 is preparing and customizing a lesson. So of all the habits of instruction, preparing the lesson is the most important. Without it, a teacher simply cannot know how each part fits into the larger story, how the math increases in complexity in each lesson, how to scaffold for students, and what parts of the lesson she needs to prioritize in the normal scheduling constraints. So Lead Eureka Math really walks administrators through that process with the lens of thinking, what must I do as an administrator to support my teachers with this preparation process? Finally, the session is focused on the lesson components and what each component looks like in a Eureka Math lesson. Now, for the first few months of implementation, your role is to ensure that all 4 components are being taught: the fluency practice, the application problem, the concept development, and the student debrief. Your job is to really make sure that it happens every day. Now, once those components are established in a classroom, then your support is moved to more of the delivering of key moves, the fluency routines, the read, draw, write process, the use of student discourse, and so on. So focusing on the 4 components and the key moves during year 1 is really key to your implementation journey. Now, these sessions, like we mentioned, launch, fluency, preparation and customization for teachers, and lead for administrators are our foundational professional development sessions. So what we most want you to take away about our foundational PD is that, like all professional learning, we focus on both mindsets about math and the knowledge and skills to teach and support instruction. We demonstrated through our opening number bond activity what those sessions will look like and how our sessions are really packed with very similar activities. Now, before Michael moves on to coaching and talks a little bit more about coaching, I want you to take a moment to reflect. And we're going to ask that if you have any questions to put it in the chat, or if you have any big takeaways that you just want to add to the chat. At this time, if you can do that, that would be great. So we'll wait a few seconds for any questions and we'll answer those. And then we'll move on to Michael discussing our coaching protocol.
I don't see any free bubbles showing up on my
I don't either, Michael.
chat. So if you guys have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. So JD just went through our foundational PD. I'm going to give us an overview of our personalized coaching, and then we'll come back and talk about sustaining and special focus PD. So for our personalized coaching, every track starts with Strong Start for Leaders, which, JD, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Which goes over strategic planning, creating effective feedback, and then having effective feedback conversations, which are the foundations for strong implementation of Eureka Math. And from that, after that, there are any number of choices that the school can make, district can make for their focus for personalized coaching. There are 4 different options for that, and we of course make that decision with you based on what you think the needs are for your school. And so on the next slide, you'll see that we have these 4 different options. They're all in 5 5-session packages preceded by Strong Start for Leaders. If you decide that you want to focus on building teacher content knowledge, then we would do that first package, where we would host like a professional learning community focused on module and topic and lesson study. If we decide to focus on the practice of Eureka Math instruction, full lessons, then we have a sequence for delivering a lesson collaboratively, where we go in and we facilitate a lesson, and your teachers observe, and we talk about their takeaways from the lesson, or we co-facilitate with some of your teachers. We can also do the prep for success, where we dig into the various components of each lesson, the fluency and concept development and the student debrief. And then finally, we have addressing unfinished learning with Eureka Math Equip. And so that is for schools who are using Equip, who want to use Equip throughout the school year to address unfinished learning. And so during those sessions, we spend time looking at the Equip pre-assessment data and then helping teachers plan for upcoming instruction so that they can build that foundational knowledge and address those gaps as they are facilitating grade level instruction. All of these tracks start with guided observations and end with observations with the leaders. In addition to the personalized coaching, we have the sustaining and special focus professional development, which would typically follow year 2 or beyond. And it begins with major work of the grade band and solving word problems, and then continues on from there. And just like with our PD, there's structure and some flexibility here. So these are offered at various time lengths: full day, half day, 90 minutes, virtually, in person, depending on the session and depending on the school's needs. And then, of course, some of these can be integrated into our coaching packages. So that's a quick overview of coaching and sustaining professional development. I'm going to pass it back to Jada to talk about the other ways in which we are account for the requirements of being a state-approved vendor.
Thank you, Michael.
Mhm.
So you experienced a brief activity at the beginning of the session where we demonstrated a number bound activity, and that's the same activity that you will experience in greater detail in our launch session. You also imagine that Eureka Math implementation is an arc. And then we highlighted how our professional development really supports you through that arc. And with the PD and coaching, that's really focused on both mindsets about math and how it builds knowledge and skills to teach math. Now we're going to share how we address the additional expectations of being a state-approved vendor. So we really have designed a strong internalization process for internalizing a module and a lesson. So in internalizing a module, we really begin with previewing the plot. We learn the important components of the module overview and how it can guide us and help us find the big meaning of the story, letting us know what the module or the story is all about. Now, the steps in the unit internalization really coincides with the steps in internalizing or preparing a lesson. So what I'll do is focus on preparing and customizing a lesson. So when you look at the first picture, you see a magnifying glass, and our first step is to discern the plot. Now, when we think about a magnifying glass, we think about that maybe we have to look deeper into something, to really see what it actually is. We recognize or identify, when we discern the plot, we recognize or identify what the big picture of the story is. So in this step, we review the table of contents and the topic overview, the problem sets, and the mid and end of module assessments to keep the end in mind and to see the trajectory of learning and the nature of the work in that module. Our next step is to find the ladder. This is where the teachers do the math themselves. They complete the problems in the problem set so they can analyze those new complexities, so they can anticipate where students may struggle. They also answer the debrief questions, anticipating how students may respond. Lastly, we move to honing the lesson. Now, this is where we select our must do, could do, and extension problems within that problem set. We select those problems that really meet the objective of the day. Then we customize based on students' needs and or scheduling constraints. Now, in these steps, teachers really consider how to best use the vignette of the concept development. Notice I said vignette and not a script, because the vignette is not meant to be a script. It's designed for the teachers to see how a lesson might look and sound in the classroom. But in this part, the teachers use the vignette and highlight selected parts of the concept development that they want to include in their delivery, maybe important vocabulary words or strategies or models that they want to be sure to use. Then teacher moves on to customizing the fluency component based on the needs of their students. And lastly, they focus on the application problem, deciding what delivery method should be used. Now, just as our sustaining sessions that we talked about earlier, we do have an additional session in our sustaining sessions called student work analysis. Now, this is in addition to our exit tickets to inform instruction, because we also have that 90-minute session. But this one is titled using student work analysis to inform instruction. And what teachers have the opportunity to do in this session is to describe assessments as an essential tool and understand that it's an essential tool to really inform instruction when facilitating learning. They get to use the assessment to determine students' current level of understanding and identify where further development may be needed. And they get an opportunity to learn how to make instructional choices based on data from the assessments. Now, in addition, as far as the requirements, we do have tools that can be used when observing lessons. Our observation protocols start with our lesson observational tool. And that's the first tool that you see on the left. This one really gives you a big idea of what you should see when you walk into a Eureka Math classroom. And this is included in our lead Eureka Math session. This tool aligns with the early phases of implementation. It really helps as administrators and teachers to focus on key moves for each component of the lesson. Now, after the initial phase, we can use this robust implementation support tool, which is part of our coaching session. So this tool is really meant to support and sustain great implementation. And it goes into far greater details about student outcomes for each component of a lesson and the core instructional moves and data instructional moves that you would see in a classroom. Now, the final component of being state approved vendor is our product embedded assessments. Every module has an end of module assessment, and most modules have a mid module assessment, just depending on how many lessons are within a topic. Now, these are really challenging assessments, and they have the most challenging applications of standards that may be assessed. They are mostly exclusively open-ended responses. The questions really focus on both understanding and skills. Now, in addition to that, we have our digital platform called Affirm. Now, this could be an add-on. With Affirm, it is included our topic quizzes, additional mid and end of module assessments. These have various types of questions. Most of the tests, almost 80% of the test is auto-scored, and it produces detailed reports that are categorized by the standards. So I'll let Michael take over now that we've gone over all that we have to offer. Michael's just going to end it with some questions that you may have.
With an inspiration. Excellent. Thanks, Jada. So thank you guys for participating here. We're now going to move this into the Q&A time. So we are here to answer any questions that you have. We're also going to provide you with a PDF that walks through all of the different PD and coaching offerings that we have and gives you a sample of what it would look like to integrate those two components over a 3-year process. And then the final word will not be ours. It will actually be from instructional coach at Montgomery ISD, about an hour and a half north of Houston. We were doing a session with them last week, and the coach opened the session by saying that she was not a math person. And we did a lot of activities, just like the number line activity we opened with. And by the end of the session, she said something and it inspired the entire room. We were all blown away. When she said, I thought I wasn't a math person, but after today's session, math makes so much more sense, and I can't wait to support my teachers. And it was such a powerful moment for all of us in the room. And I think there's no better quote, no better moment in the PD session that exemplifies our focus, our dual focus on both mindsets and practice. Mindsets about math, about children, about equity, academic equity, and about practice, like the knowledge and skills to teach or to coach and lead Eureka Math. So with that, we will leave this open for any questions that you guys have. You're welcome to drop them in the chat or come off mute. And Jada has provided our contact information and a QR code that you can scan with your phone to schedule a meeting. And that's all for us. So we're here to answer your questions.